Amen. Welcome my wife to the stage. She's going to come up and help me. We're going to finish out the family series today with the conversation. So if you're a guest with us, we value the preaching of God's word, and then we also value having conversations about real life. And today we're going to have a conversation about real life. I can tell that the Chiefs have a noon game today. All right, always funny how that works. And so anyways, we're going to dive in. I want to encourage you to take notes. I think that's just an important thing to learn and grow. Today, there will be something for everyone. And so let's dive in. I titled the message today, how to navigate when your job description changes. How many have a job description? Anybody ever had a job description? All right. And anybody's job description ever changed? Let me help you here. In family, your job description will continually change from one season to the next. How do we navigate those? First of all, let's talk about, and I love having my wife up here because she makes me look a lot better. Woo, I'm married up. All right. Let's talk about, first of all, we touched on this a couple weeks ago, so we're not going to go very long on this one. Adult children. What lessons have you learned about being a mom to our adult boys?
I learned that they do grow up and leave the house.
Woo, praise the Lord. Empty nest is the way to go.
Yes, we're 5 days sober on being empty nesters again. Just
yeah, they come back for a little while. Our youngest son is a welder, and we call him the welding gypsy because his job will end, and then he'll come back here and get a job, and we're like, hey, is there a job like in Minnesota? Or
the lessons that I have learned is that as the kids grow up, like if I've done my job well, when they become adults, when they turn 18, and I did address this in the first service, that I told some of my kids because of their birthdays and where they fell. Some of them turned 18 before they graduated from high school. So I was very quick to remind them that just because you turn 18, it is not the magic number that is going to allow you to just run amok and do as you please. Even though you are legally an adult, you are still in school and you're still living in this house, and you will follow these rules. But once they graduated from high school, I got a new job description. My job description went from being the parent to being more of a mentor and a guide. And so it was definitely a pivotal turn to be able to embrace that new role with them.
Yeah. What's been the toughest thing that you've had to navigate with adult children?
Watching them make mistakes, knowing that they're going to make them. Your kids, it's funny, once they become adults and they become married and have kids of their own, I think they start to realize that mom and dad have already been through some of these seasons in life. But when they're teenagers and young adults, they kind of forget that we've been through every season that they are going through, and we've been through more seasons, and we have wisdom that they don't have. You've heard us say in several occasions where, because we're in that mentor role, we're in a different place. So they may not be open to getting input on what direction they need to have in life. So we have always been respectful of our kids because we never wanted our parents to tell us what to do when we're adults. We always start off by asking our kids, can I give you some input? And then sometimes they say no because they have their mind made up, and I have to just sit in that and be okay with it. And even though in my head I'm like, this is about to be a massive train wreck, but you're going to learn a really valuable lesson today. But that's okay. And then when they have train wrecked that, or occasionally they surprise us and they made a good decision and we didn't think it would be. And we do circle back and say, I don't know that, I didn't think that was a great decision in the beginning, and I probably would have advised you differently, but good job. You did good. But also just coaching them, because we're not going to be around forever. They need to be able to process and make good decisions on their own. So trying to maybe do some prompting questions, just coming from a place of curiosity to help them arrive at the decision that needs to be made, like, well, have you thought about this? Or what does that look like? So it helps them work through the processing.
Yeah, and Linda was really good about giving me some coaching because I'd want to still be the dad, father figure. And she's like, you got to quit treating them like little kids. They're adults. And sometimes that's hard. And I think your insecurities can grab a hold of you. And so the faster you can treat your adult children like adults. Now, let me speak to adult children that are still living in the house. You need to move out of your parents' house as soon as possible and take responsibility for your life if you can. All right? And all the parents said? Amen. All right, you can give. Just send it to Chris and Linda Pinion at P.O. Box.
So we're getting ready to transition to the next phase of life, and that is when your adult children grow up and they choose a mate. So one of the things that we did was we were really strategic in building relationships because we have 3 boys, so we were really strategic in building relationships with basically all the girls that have come in and out of our home over the course of the years, because you never know which one is actually going to stay. Because I have been around enough to observe that women tend to gravitate to their own family and hang out, especially for holidays and things like that. And I would be so sad because I have invested all this time and energy into cultivating this strong, healthy relationship with our boys, and to miss that. And so I really was intentional with every girl that came in trying to build a relationship. So my now former daughter-in-laws, but at the time they were my current daughter-in-laws, it was a running joke in our house during the holidays, because Mother's Day, my birthday, and different holidays, my phone would start dinging at like 8 o'clock in the morning. And they were like, let me guess, it's the girlfriend guild. And I was like, yes, it is. Because I have built such good relationships with all these girls over the years. Even though the relationship didn't work out with our boys, they still have a great relationship with me. And I love that I have gotten shower invitations and wedding invitations, and it is absolutely a joy and a privilege to go and to witness that and to see them grow in life. And I love that because you want your kids to be successful in their relationships, and you want other people to be. So I love being able to do that. So we built these great relationships with these girls that our sons brought home, and truly, the ones that became our daughter-in-laws, we deeply love them. We deeply love them. They are 100% in our mind and in our heart. They are daughters of ours.
Yes.
And we're super grateful for them. We had hoped that they would stick around for a lifetime. But unfortunately, that did not go as we had hoped. And as I'm sure, God's plan for our marriage is to marry and be in a lifetime commitment. And so that was kind of sad, and it was difficult for us to process through. It felt a lot like losing a child, because they're here and then they're suddenly not. So definitely a big transition for us.
Yeah. And so recently we moved into the step family. There's a lot of words for this. They use the word step family or blended family. We're going to use for this morning step family. And so we started moving into that. Let me give you some interesting statistics from Family Life Today and Barna Research, who are statisticians that study this kind of stuff around the U.S. and the world. They said in step families, second marriages have a 24% success rate within the first 5 years. If you're on your third marriage, you only have a 13% chance of succeeding, and the fourth marriage only has 7% chance of succeeding. And they said step families are complex. There's different dynamics, so don't be misinformed. It was very interesting. We did a little study, has a staff back in January of 2024. We spent 2 staff meetings. We meet every Thursday from 10 to noon, and we spent 2 staff meetings at a lengthy discussion and watching videos ahead of time, and Pastor Matt kind of led it, having conversations about step families and educating ourselves. And then we created questions, and we had Pastor Matt go around and interview different step families in our church. And the one question that was asked that was really intriguing to me was, how much education have you had about going into a step family? And almost all of them, I think all of them, 100% of the people that were interviewed, had no preparation, no study. And so let me just put on my pastor hat here. I'm not mad, but I'm passionate, okay? Why do we, this is not about step families, this is we as human beings. Why do we walk around in our marriages and parenting and everything in life blindly? Like, can you just imagine just driving blindly this afternoon? Like, I just blindfold you and you just start driving. You're like, well, I would never do that. That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard of in my life. And if I don't know where I'm going to go, I'm going to use a map or I'm going to get, then why don't we ask other people? And so I'm like, if you aren't taking notes, especially if you're in a family, which is all of you, this is going to deal with everybody. You ought to take some notes because we ought to seek advice. You know what the Bible says in Proverbs? There's wisdom in a multitude of counselors. And so the way I figure it is, I might as well build relationships with the people that have been there, done that, because I'm going to make mistakes. So why don't I avoid the mistakes that they made? Do you hear what I'm saying? So I think it was interesting when they said, do not be misinformed. It's going to take work. Most of the divorce in step families happen in the first 3 years, so they don't get to the hard work. See, hard work in marriage doesn't just happen. Like, the first couple of years, pretty easy. It's when you get in years, usually year 7, 5 to 7. It's different for everybody. So let me just give you this, a number of issues single parents bring to a step family situation. Past rejection, custody issues, alimony issues, child support issues, how their past spouse impacts their present marriage. Some bring their former spouse into their present marriage by comparison. Former spouses' antics or messing up into the relationship. Issues of grandparents not being able to see the grandkids, so Family Life Today said there is a lot of lawsuits where grandparents will file to be able to see their grandkids. And, this is what the husband and wife have to deal with. This isn't even mentioning what the kids have to deal with. So I think it's just really wise for us to have a conversation about step family. Mm-hmm. And we're new to this. So why don't you tell a little bit about your family growing up, and then
Sure.
I'll tell about mine.
So I come from a blended family, but not a broken family. And so to clarify that, my parents were both previously married. My dad had 3 daughters. They were really not part of our life growing up. They kind of came in and out on occasional visit, just a handful of times. So I don't really have a lot of invested in those relationships. My mom had a boy and a girl when my parents married, and they're 16 and 18 years older than me, so I came along much later. So in a lot of ways, I kind of felt like an only child, but I can tell you, my parents modeled the blended family so well in front of me that I didn't know anything different as far as, to me, they are by law my half-siblings, but it's never crossed my mind that they're anything other than my brother and my sister, full and wholeheartedly. So I'm grateful for that. They always considered my dad as their dad. They did have a biological dad who he struggled with alcoholism, so they didn't get to have the type of relationship with him that they had longed for. But my dad never got in the way of them necessarily wanting to try and have a relationship with them, but they just kind of found out on their own as they got older that dad loved them, but dad was not making good choices, and he was not in a position to be a father. So they really they loved my dad, and they considered him their father.
So growing up for me, my mom was divorced 7 times, married 8, and then her last husband passed away. And my mom went home to be with Jesus a couple years ago. But we would have, she would marry, I remember there was a couple times where she married this one guy that was up the street, and he ended up being a terrible alcoholic, and we had to move out in the middle of the night. But during that time, he had 2 boys. He had a handicapped son and another boy. So I was in 3rd grade. And so all of a sudden I had stepbrothers for a minute. When I say a minute, it was less than a year, and then we were out of there. And so we've experienced this a little bit growing up. Now we have in our immediate family, step family, because we have our 2 boys who were married, and then now they're divorced. but we love their daughters, and they're still, I mean, their wives, and they're still like daughters to us. And we told them, we said, look, if you can't get along with her, that's your problem. We're still going to love them. We're not going to go, no, we don't love you anymore. And so we're walking through that right now, and it can be a challenge.
And we do still I mean, there are some boundaries that have to be in place, because then you have to think about the new people that are coming into our family, because both of our sons who are now divorced, they are also dating now. So just like I tried really hard and we were successful in building strong relationships with our former daughter-in-laws, we are currently building great relationships with the new young ladies that have come into our family. And also, we're trying to cultivate a mindset. I disdain how we as society look at how you are supposed to behave when there's a divorce. Like, I don't agree that just because there's a divorce, that then now I'm supposed to suddenly dislike this other person that's no longer a part of my family. I hate that. I think that's wrong. I think society has just made this the normal, and I would challenge everybody to, why do we allow society to dictate that? Why can't we establish what the new normal is? Why can't we love God and love people? Because that's what we're called to do. And so, as a woman, I'm passionate about mentoring women that are younger than me. It's not on me that my sons decided that they didn't want to be married to these young ladies anymore. That's between them. But what's between us is, I can still love you, and I can still be there for you and help you through every season of life. And so I know we talked to, Sabrina was the only one that had a child from the marriage. And so we told her from the very beginning, at some point you're going to meet someone. And when you do, they may not have any children, or they might. So you're going to inherit some bonus children. You may decide you want to have more children of your own. So when that stage happens, just know that we're here for all of it, because we can't be just grandparents to Graham and then come pick him up for ice cream and leave 3 other little people looking at us thinking, well, we would really like to go get ice cream, because the kids didn't sign up for that. Yeah. And it's not their fault, and we shouldn't alienate them. And so we currently, in this season, we call them our bonus kids. So Garrett's girlfriend has three children, and Bree's boyfriend has 3 children. And so we have a grandson, and we have 6 bonus babies right now. But if a marriage comes from that, then however many grandkids we're going to gain, we may catapult from 1 to 4 or 1 to 7. We're here for it. So, but I think it's important for us to be able to have an influence in those kids' lives no matter how long we have them for. So, all these relationships that they're in right now, they're about a year in. And so we're continuing to build relationships with these girls. And I'm explaining to them, like, listen, I still have a great relationship, or we still have a great relationship with our former daughter-in-laws. I basically don't accept that. I'm sorry, I hope that's not weird to you. That, to me, it's not even an option. So I just pretty much say, that is valuable to us. We love them. They were brought into our home, and we adopted them into our family. And so they are still in our heart, but there's room in our heart for others. And so we try really hard to be incredibly inclusive with that.
And I love the way Linda said it, and I don't know if you said it just now or in the first service, but she says it all the time, like, I know it's weird, but we tell our boys, like, it's only weird if you make it weird. Like, what's weird is doing what society does. Why would you want to do what people are doing that are not successful? Just a question. Just asking for a friend. So, along these lines, it's been extremely difficult. One of the values that we have in our home is we embrace difficult, hard conversations. So we're not afraid to have a hard conversation. And I'm thankful that I married a woman that is not afraid to have hard conversations. And so, like, if one of the new girlfriends is like, well, I don't like it that you're close to the ex-wife or your daughter-in-law, and I'm like, well, then you're going to have a real hard time in this family, because that's not changing. And we just don't put up with, if we start sensing, it's just like here at the church, if we start sensing there's some undercurrents, usually it's mom opinion, but I'll do it too. We'll call a family meeting, get everybody together, and we're going to get all the troops on the same page.
Yeah, because we're not going to have division in the family.
Yep.
At all, because that will tank us, and we're not doing that.
Yeah. So the next season that I want to talk about is grandparenting. Being a Poppy and a Grammy has been the best thing that has ever happened. In fact, I told our boys, like, man, if I'd have known it was going to be this fun, I would have had kids, you know? And then they're like, well, Dad, you wouldn't be a grandpa. I'm like, yeah, you're right. So we just love it. I call it second chance parenting. Being a grandparent is an opportunity for you to invest differently than maybe you did with your own kids, and to do things a little bit better. And so we're committed to that. I'm committed to spending time with Graham. And then we're also figuring out what the bonus children and what that looks like too. And yeah, so I had a couple questions about what's been the greatest thing about being Grammy. Because you make a great Grammy.
Grammy is so fun. The best part about being a Grammy is I know I've been through all the seasons of these kids, and I see all the growth that happens, and I know that they value what you have to say. And so you build a safe place for them to come and to feel loved, and that going to Grammy's house and Poppy's house is always a safe place.
Yeah. It's interesting statistics that we read in the first service, but there is a statistic that says, I'm going to see if I can find it here. It's right here. So this is so interesting. Research suggests that grandparents have far more influence than they might realize. The National Study of Protestant Congregations, Barna Research, and Lifeway Research have all found consistently that mom and dad are number one when it comes to what influences children who go on to have faith in Jesus Christ. But as you go down the list, the next most influential people are grandparents, and they still are more influential than any church program. So I know for me, the reason why I am where I am today is 100% because of my grandma and grandpa. 100%, hands down. Yeah, it was because of Jesus brought them, but because of they poured into my life, and I lived with them growing up. And so we want, like she said, Poppy and Grammy's house to be a safe place. Now let me backtrack too about having adult children. Culture says, and everybody says, because you've just heard it said, you know, people are like, why do you have a big house? Like, don't you downsize when you get, I mean, you don't have any kids, like you got these bedrooms. Let me help you here. If we downsize to a home with a small kitchen and one little bathroom and everything, and we have 3 boys, and they all get married, and they all have 3 kids, and they all want to come to Poppy and Grammy's house for Thanksgiving, it's not going to happen. Do you follow me? Yep. If they want to come over for game night, and everybody wants to come together, like we had a family dinner the other night at this restaurant, and we're like taking up, and we didn't have everybody's there. You know what I mean? Like we're taking up the restaurant. So we chose, you can choose however you, but we chose to go against what society says, and we have a big house for that reason. Because we want to entertain our family. We want them to come to our house, okay? And so being a grandparent has been an amazing time. An amazing time. And I know that there's going to be a day soon. I'll do Poppy and Graham Day with Graham. And we have a little bit of a routine, and then we do some fun stuff that we'll figure out together. But one of the things we do when I pick him up from daycare is we go and we meet, and we sit across the table from each other, and I have a conversation with him. And I know this is different for maybe even some of you parents that are always so busy that you don't have time to, your kids, you're always pushing your kids, or even grandparents that are older and you just don't feel like messing with the kids. It's so important. It's so important. You're like, well, he's just 4 years old. Listen, him and I have such awesome conversations. And we have such a great connection. We always have. And it is intentional and it takes time and energy and focus to make it happen.
And I think, too, with our kids now being a blended family, it's important for them to come because we provide stability. And I remember hearing my son talk about, because, he did not come from a broken home, so he didn't realize the impact that divorce has on children. So when he and Brianna separated, Graham was only 2. And he goes, he's not even going to remember it. He's going to be unscathed. Like, he's fine. Because we kept saying, you are altering this child's life by this decision. Like, are you sure you guys can't work this out? Can you go to counseling? Can you, like, what you're experiencing is normal? Like, you just had a new child. It's a young marriage. Like, and it's no, we can't figure this out. And so I'm like, man, I hate that. And so we're like, I want Graham to be as unscathed in this as possible. He will feel it. But so that's why we also encouraged them, like, listen, you guys need to come together as parents. You need to co-parent well. You need to be kind to one another. You need to model in front of your child good adulting and good co-parenting. You need to be at every game. You need to be sitting together. You need to be on the front row, and you need to be your kid's biggest cheerleader, because that's what they need. They need a strong parent, both mom and dad. And what a beautiful thing is if they have a stepmom and a stepdad and everybody, it's like one big fan club. How beautiful is that? You have built so much into that child. And so I'm like, the goal in this is for Graham to be at the end of his adolescence and to be able to say, you know what, my mom and dad, they couldn't figure their stuff out when they were married. But I will tell you, I had the best childhood I could possibly have because my parents, they set their own stuff aside and they came together because I was important and I was valuable, and they loved me deep enough to never say anything mean about my other parents, and they didn't miss anything, and they didn't have to sit on the other side because they can't stand to be next to each other. They made a conscious decision to say, you know what, we made this child out of love, and we're going to love this child from now until forever, because that's what it is, and it's all about those kids.
Yeah, and you have to set that, and so Poppy and Grammy set that tone, and I just can't emphasize enough, like, we do not allow intercurrence in our family, just like we don't allow it in the home. And so the next thing I want to transition to is the last job description that we probably all will have if you haven't already been through it, is aging parents. Aging parents. And there are some really good questions that someone gave me about aging parents, because I think when it comes to aging parents, we don't think deeply about this stuff, And so let me just cover some of the stuff that we learned just real quick so that we don't get stuck in the muck. We learned a lot. We learned that if your parents are in their right mind and they're able to make decisions, even if they're not sick. They don't have to be sick. They shouldn't be sick when you have these conversations. You need to have a conversation about death. You need to have a conversation about life insurance and where all of the things are, policies, passwords. And then here's the other thing we learned. And I've learned this being in real estate for the last 7.5 years. I'm not a real estate attorney, but like I was just on the phone with one this week about some real estate stuff. Get a trust and get everything that you value in a trust, because wills, everybody thinks wills are worth a lot. Listen, if the state wants to get their money, you can have a will that was signed by Jesus, and they're going to get their money. And if there's anything left over, then you can divide it in your will. If it's in a trust, the state can't touch it. Does that make sense? Get a real estate attorney. The other thing we learned is elder law. Get a good elder law attorney. Start studying this stuff ahead of time. Talk about how we started preparing with your mom after your dad died, because Grandpa Cecil died. How many years ago was it? 23? 23 years ago this week, unexpectedly. And so we had to walk through this. 23
Yeah,
years
my
ago?
parents were really good. They planned financially for their retirement and for their elder years. They took out long-term health, like life insurance, so that they cared for them. So if you haven't checked into the price of what it costs for a long-term care facility, brace yourself, because just 4 or 5 years ago when we enrolled my mom, it was just under $7,000 a month. So buckle up, it's expensive. And then,
And it's gone up since then?
yes, it has. So that will get you. But after my dad died, my mom wanted to make sure, because she was the beneficiary to everything, so she wanted to make sure that everything was buttoned up. And she did a really good job. She put us on bank statements and like all the different things that she thought. And so then when it came time for her, when she wasn't incapacitated yet, but she definitely was struggling with her memory. But when it came time, as we were inching closer, and honestly, we were probably delayed, and I'm grateful that they were in the financial position that they were. So we were talking about this earlier, and I didn't look it up, but somewhere between 5 and 7 years, the state can look back, and they can basically assume your finances to take care of you. And so if you don't have all those provisions in place ahead of time and know how to do that and navigate that, then all of their money that they have left legacy-wise and asset-wise can be seized by the government to care for them. So that's why I would recommend always talk to an elder law attorney, because they can help you get all those things in place beforehand.
And when we went through this, you start thinking, well, I'm going to move money around. It doesn't matter. You can try to move money around.
Move money.
You can move money around. They're going to find it.
Transfer assets into someone
you
else's
can-
name. It
you
doesn't
can-
matter.
Yeah, they're gonna get it. But if you have it in a trust and you do it ahead of time, and so even planning out the celebration of life, do you know what a gift it is? Listen, this is for everybody. Do you know what a gift it is if when you pass away, you've already planned out your celebration of life, you've already paid for burial or cremation, and you've got your house in order? Do you know how many people in 32 years I walk with through? Probably, I want to say at least 80%, and that might be being generous, who have nothing, no plan, no nothing. And I'm sitting there with the loved one. I'm like, hey, even as simple as what songs do you think David would want? And they're like, at that moment, they can't even think. As opposed to, oh, it's right here. It's right here. They've already got the funeral home. It's right here.
And know where that stuff is,
Yeah.
and have those conversations like we've already told our kids, like, hey, if dad and I die, you need to go here. There's a binder. It has every single thing in it that you need.
With passwords,
Yes.
everything. And then we have a trustee, we have someone that's a trustee over the trust. And so a trust is going to cost you between $2,000 and $3,000. If you have legal insurance, which we do, it costs us like $250. And it took less than a month or two to get it all together. But here's a question. Somebody asked, and I think it's a great question. What do you do if your parent or parents need to go to a nursing home or assisted living or memory care, but they don't want to go?
That's really tough. I remember taking my mom's driver's license away. That was a fight, and like not letting her drive. But I think that you just have to think in terms of, and this was a bit of a transition in my brain. It's like almost you grieve them before they're gone. So for my mom, it started with, and I mean, not every parent is going to pass away from dementia. This is my story, so this is how it affected me. But my mom, she had moments of small forgetfulness or getting turned around or lost, or forgetting just things that she's done by routine every day. And then, we escalated to the point, and then by the end, she didn't even know who I was. And she had resorted to playing with baby dolls, which that was heartbreaking for me to watch my mom treat a doll like a live baby, wanting to feed the baby and all the things. And so that was really difficult. So it's that mental switch where you realize in that moment that I am now going to become the parent. And I'm going to advocate for my mom for the best care that she can possibly have, just like I would advocate for my own children if they were ill or if I was seeing something that wasn't right. And in that, it's emotional, but then once you get through the emotional piece, it's, I have to get it done. And so then with that same mindset, hopefully by now, you've had a power of attorney, you've got a medical power of attorney, you've had a discussion about a do not resuscitate order, you know where all of that is. And then when you go to the doctor's appointment or whatever, and mom's not wanting to go to a care facility or whatever, you've already had a conversation with your provider and you've basically said, here are my observations of what's happening, and we're just not safe anymore, and I need my parent to be safe. Then it's a conversation that really comes well together between, and I kind of, with the whole driving thing, because I would planted the seed and she was like, oh no, I'm not gonna stop driving. And I'm like, oh, but you need to. And so I had kind of hid her keys, didn't tell her that I had hid her keys and she couldn't find them. So I drove her to the doctor's appointment. And so I pretty much allowed the doctor to be the heavy on that, and pretty much just say, Miss Green, it's just not smart, it's not wise, and we want you to be safe. And so I just let the doctor be the heavy, and then I just basically played the, yeah, Mom, I'm really sorry, because the whole way home, she's complaining, I can't believe he's going to take my keys away. I can't believe he's not going to let me drive. And I'm like, you know, that really stinks, but it's going to be okay, because I'm going to get you everywhere you need to go, and we're going to get through it together. So then you get to scoop in and be the hero. It's pretty great.
So I guess we just want to urge you, like, when it comes to family and taking care of family and loving family, you know, having plans about this stuff. Let me say about DNRs, being a first responder, there's so many times that people, you know, they say, oh, the person has a DNR. Here's the truth. Unless we see the original copy, it cannot be a copy, it has to be original copy. If it's not an original copy, then any EMS or doctors are going to work that person until they see the original copy. And so that would be for all of us. If you wish to not be resuscitated and, you know, you're about ready to die and there's a potential that you'd be a vegetable, or whatever your decision is on that, let's make those decisions ahead of time in love for our family. Does that make sense? I know there's a lot of other questions. Is there anything you want to say in closing before I read the
The only
scripture?
other thing I wanted to add was that I do remember the feeling after my mom passed away. So my dad had been gone several years prior. And I remember like trying to go through life insurance and all, you know, you spend 2 days on the phone with different companies and closing out this account and paying this. And I remember when I was finished with all of that, just sitting back feeling emotionally and mentally exhausted. But then it's like that moment hit me where I was like, I'm an orphan. I have no parents. And then there was this sense of responsibility that I felt like the torch has officially been passed to me. I am now the matriarch of this family. That's big, because my mom was the one that held our family together, because she was always intentional about come home for the holidays, come home for the meals. And she was the inspiration. They built a family that I wanted to replicate. And so now I feel the weight of that as now the matriarch of our family, to continue that legacy on and to pass it on with my kids. I don't have daughters, but yet I do. And the time that I spend with those women that aren't my biological daughters, I'm investing in them and saying, I need you to keep our family together. Because it's important. Because you're building memories and you're setting a legacy up in front of these kids. And it's important to pass that on from generation to generation.
Yeah. And you've done a beautiful job. Yeah. Thank you, babe. Let's give Linda a hand. Give her a hand. I want to close with this scripture, 1 Corinthians 13, and listen to what it says, starting with verse 4. This is what a family should be about. Family is going to be about giving grace to others and giving grace to yourself, loving others and loving yourself. Listen to what it says. Love is patient and kind. Love is not jealous or boastful or proud or rude. It does not demand its own way. It is not irritable, and it keeps no record of being wronged. It does not rejoice about injustice, but it rejoices whenever the truth wins out. Love never gives up. Love never loses faith, is always hopeful, and endures through every circumstance. What would happen if in our families we began to love like Jesus loved? What would happen if we began to give grace? I hope this family series has been helpful to you. Will you stand? We're going to close in prayer.